Hello everybody, welcome to day 3 of BOOKMAS. Because today is Thursday, we're going to do Throwback Thursday, and it's going to be the same for all 5 Thursdays in December. So when we started our channel, it was October 2019 and I was 7 months pregnant, which meant that after Ezra was born on December the 11th, we kind of failed to upload a few videos because it was exhausting having a newborn and it was hard to find any time to edit, let alone film. So today we're going to be throwing it back to December 2019, where we're going to do our December wrap up. I hope you enjoy this video. As you can see by the thumbnail, you've got an idea of some of the books I'm going to be talking about. There's quite a few, so I'll just hand you over to December 19 Alice and she can do the rest. Hi everyone, it's Alice and I'm coming at you today with our December wrap up. We actually ended up having a baby in the middle of the month. I mean, it wasn't unexpected. We knew it was going to happen. But we read more than we were expecting to and just haven't had a chance to film since then. So there's quite a lot of books to talk about today. So I'm just going to get on with it. First read of the month was Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw. I told you I was really excited about this one and I was right to be. This ended up being a 5-star read for us. It's about a girl called Nora. She lives in a forest in the woods and she goes out to a enchanted forest and she finds a boy there. And at the same time there's this big snowstorm and the place is completely under snow, and she finds out that at the boys' camp across the lake there's actually been a murder. So she thinks that the boy that she's found might be the one who committed the crime, and she's not sure whether she should shelter him or whether she should let people know that she's got a random boy in her house. The Wicked Deep was one of my favourite reads of 2019 already, and Winterwood far surpassed it. Shay Earnshaw just has this absolutely brilliant talent when it comes to describing places and making them into their own characters, and I had chills running down my spine at multiple points while reading this. I read it in a day, which I was not expecting to do, and I ended up crying for about 15 minutes after I finished it because it just really hit me in the feels. The epilogue as well, like I'm not a fan of epilogues because I think they normally just do too much, but this hit the spot exactly. And I couldn't rate it more highly. So if you haven't tried Shay Earnshaw's writing before, you definitely need to. The second book that I read in December was Major Barbara by George Bernard Shaw. I read that because it was referenced in The Collector by John Fowles, and I'd always been interested in it, but I thought after rereading The Collector I'd give Major Barbara a go. Ended up being 3 stars. Like, it's a nice enough play. There's some good social commentary in it, there's some funny bits, but I think it's one of those ones that will probably translate better when it's on a stage. The third book that we read in December was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now this is my either 3rd or 4th time reading Red Rising. It's one of my favourite books and it's always going to be. I read it with my partner this time and he absolutely loved it as well. We gave it 5 stars and we have carried on with the rest of the series, but you'll have to wait until my January wrap up to see what he thought of Golden Sun and Morning Star. This is about a boy called Darrow whose girlfriend is killed because she rebels against the society that they live in. They are Reds, and in this society Reds are the lowest of the low and they're lorded over by the Golds. And after Darrow's girlfriend is killed, he is recruited by this agency called the Sons of Ares, and they actually turn him into a Gold so that he can infiltrate their society and try and tear it down from the inside. And you'll just have to see how he does by reading it yourself. But yes, always going to be a 5 stars for Red Rising. The next book I read in December was Winter Stories by Enid Blyton. I do have a copy of this somewhere, but my daughter has hidden it because she absolutely loved it. So Winter Stories is just a collection of a bunch of different short stories by Enid Blyton. We ended up giving it 4 stars overall because there's some really good little morals in there and it's quite educational. Like, it teaches you about different winter creatures, teaches you things like listening to your parents when it comes to like wearing scarves and not skating on ponds. It's just a really fun, quick read, so if you're looking for something short that you can dip in and out of, it's ideal for that. The next book that I read in December was Undone by Kat Clark. So I've been challenging myself to get all of the currently reading books off of my Goodreads because I looked at it at the beginning of 2019 and I had like 15 books on there that I was allegedly currently reading. I think I first picked Undone up in like 2013. I got 100 pages in. My heart was already breaking, and I realised I just couldn't read it at that point because I was in a really bad place mentally. So I waited to try it now, and it was a 5-star read for me. Kat Clarke has a brilliant writing style, especially when it comes to like hard-hitting contemporaries. This is UKYA as well, so that's always a good thing to support because obviously USYA gets a lot more celebrated. But this is about a girl called Jem whose best friend kills himself, and she decides to get revenge on the popular kids who bullied him because she thinks that they were responsible for his suicide. So she infiltrates them, she starts dating the most popular guy, and she's twisting them all against each other to try and take them down. It's actually quite twisty-turny. Like, there are like some really thrilling bits. So considering it's just a contemporary, there are bits when your heart is like in your mouth because you're thinking, oh god, she's gonna get caught. And it all comes to like a really, really big... It all comes to a head. I'm still not sure how I feel about the ending. And the ending did make me think that I might give it a lower rating. But I found myself, even like a week later, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So it has to be a 5-star. If you haven't read any of Kat Clarke's writing yet, she is one of my favourite UKYA authors. And you should definitely give it a go. Particularly Entangled, which was her debut novel. When I read that, I read it in one sitting, and that was when I hardly read anything, and I just cried for days. So yeah, big fan of Kat Clarke, big fan of Undone. She excelled herself once again. The next book that I read in December was Hold Still by Nina LaCour. This is actually quite similar to Undone in that it follows a girl whose best friend commits suicide, and she finds her notebook hidden in her bedroom. So even though her friend is gone, she can kind of see how she was feeling, and she can discover a lot more after she's passed. So you get like these bits here where it's like the letters written to Caitlin from Ingrid, and those are spliced through. Like you get some of Ingrid's artwork, like even just on the front page on the end papers you get some of her artwork. I only ended up giving this one 4 stars. It's quite hopeful because you do have a bit of a happier ending than you get with Undone, and you do see Caitlin kind of moving past it all, but there was just something about it that just didn't completely click with me. Like, I feel like, I'm not sure if it's the length of it because it's very, very short, but it felt like the grieving process was very accelerated. And everybody grieves differently, so that might just be the way that Nina LaCour experiences grief, and she wants her characters to experience it. But I feel like for me, it wasn't quite authentic. Yeah, but I'm already considering getting a new copy of this one, because I'm planning on donating it because it is a really bad beat-up library copy. But this is a story that really does stick in your mind. So I think it's a case that I'm probably going to end up getting one, and I definitely want to read more of Nina's work in the future. The next book we read in December was 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston. We ended up giving that 5 stars. Read it through the library app, so I don't have a copy here to show you, but it is just such a cute little contemporary. A girl's boyfriend breaks up with her, and she's absolutely distraught, and so her nana's like, Sophia, we're gonna set you up with some people. So her family get to fight over this chart of dates, and they each pick a different person for her to go on these 10 blind dates with. And some of them are really, really wacky, and some of them go really, really well, and you get to meet like a whole cast of characters. Like the family themselves are really authentic because you've got like the evil cousins, you've got the kooky uncle, you've got the overbearing grandparents whose hearts are in the right place but they're a bit full on at times. And it's a really heartwarming story, especially because it's set in December, so it's set around Christmas, and we read it around Christmas, which I think was just perfect. We'd been thinking of reading it for October, and we'd held it off to read it at Christmas, and we both ended up absolutely loving it. I haven't read any of Ashley Elston's work before, but I definitely am going to keep an eye out for her because it's just so lovely, and I can definitely imagine it being adapted to like a Netflix show or something like that, because it would just translate so well getting to see all of the antics that Sophia experiences played out on the big screen. The next books that we read in December, we actually read a series, and instead of just reading Fangirl, which was meant to be... We were meant to be reading Fangirl and then doing Carry On as a bonus book last month, but then we ended up squeezing away with Sun 2 because it's just really, really short. So Fangirl, 5 stars, easily. It was a reread for me. My partner absolutely loved it. He loved it so much that we ended up buying a copy for his sister for Christmas. This is about a girl, like 2 twins. They're called Kath and Ren, and they go to university, and Kath writes fanfic for this series called Simon Snow, which is quite similar to Harry Potter, and Carry On, Wayward Son follows Simon Snow, so it's like the story that is made in the story. But Ren, who is Kath's twin, goes off the rails. She gets drunk a lot, and it's all about family and kind of looking after yourself when you're in a new situation and knowing what makes you comfortable, making sure that you're not doing things to impress people and that you're still being true to yourself at heart, which I think it's always going to be a really good story. Now, Carry On and Wayward Son. So Carry On is the first book in the Simon Snow trilogy. Wayward Son is the second, and the third one is coming probably this year. I don't actually think it's been announced yet. But so this follows Simon Snow. It's very similar to Harry Potter, but Simon Snow is in love with his roommate Baz, and Baz is a vampire as well as a wizard. Like, that's pretty cool. So Carry On got 5 stars. Wayward Son actually only got 4 stars, but we were thinking of putting it a bit lower because it's very rushed. Like, I've seen so many people giving this really, really great reviews, and even a 4-star isn't that bad, but it's definitely, like, rounded up from a 3.5, and I'm thinking of rounding it down to a 3, because there's a lot of setup that doesn't really pay off. The ending is very disappointing, and I love the fact that it follows the Chosen One after the events that he's chosen for, but I just feel like it could have been done a bit better, and I'm very much looking forward to Any Way the Wind Blows, but I'm not sure how it's going to work, because if it's rushed like this one, it's just going to send this series really down. So fingers crossed, it'll end up being a bit better than Wayward Son was. The next book that I read in December was Frostblood by Ellie Blake. I've been wanting to read Frostblood for a very long time, but I have difficulties starting series before they're concluded, so I always end up putting them off until all of the books are out so that I can try and binge them. So Nightblood came out, I want to say middle of 2018, so I really should have read these before the end of 2019, but I just kept putting it off, and I can see why, because I only ended up giving it 2 stars. This is a book that if you don't have much experience with YA fantasy, if you're a new reader who's looking for things that you can try out and you don't have much experience, you'll probably love this, because there are just so many cliched tropes in it. It's a lot of the stuff that you'll see all the time. Like, so if you've watched Game of Thrones, then you'll find out that, like, characters are royalty and they don't know. There's, like, a lot of imagery of, like, destroying the throne, like, trying to tear down the monarchy by destroying the throne itself. So it's a lot of the stuff that you'll see over and over again in fantasy. And because I've read quite a lot of books, like, I just kept thinking, like, oh, I'm just reading Everless again. If I hadn't just reread Everless, I probably wouldn't have been feeling so down on this, but I very much felt like I was reading the same book again. And Ruby, who is the main character, just seems to be one of those people that, like, everything just goes fine for her. Like, she's in the arena battling, and she goes into, like, another state, and everything turns black and white, and she just instantly beats her opponent when she's, like, almost about to die. And it doesn't feel very realistic, it doesn't feel very authentic, and I know, obviously, you're meant to be able to suspend your belief a little bit with fantasy, but I wasn't really a fan of it. I have read the second book as well, and I'm planning on finishing the series just because I want to see how it finishes. I'll share my thoughts on Fireblood in the January wrap-up, but it's not really going well, which is such a shame, because, like, I was so excited, and I've been putting them off for so long because I thought I was going to absolutely love them, and I should have just dived in and read them at the time. The next 2 books that we read were also 2-star reads, and that was Dash and Lily's Book of Dares and The 12 Days of Dash and Lily by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. So many people absolutely love these, and they're always reading them near Christmas. It's always at the top of people's Christmas TBR, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to bite the bullet, and I'm finally going to get them read, and I really wish I hadn't. Every Day by David Levithan is one of my favourite books, and probably always will be, but every other David Levithan book I've read has disappointed me to no end. I was tempted to give these 1 stars, but it's just a case that they didn't even, like, piss me off. They just really bored me. Like, you start off and Dash is so pretentious, and Lily is one of those manic pixie dream girls that doesn't even know she's a manic pixie dream girl. She's like, oh, I called my hamster Spazzy, but I really hate any kinds of discrimination. And it's like, well, don't call your hamster Spazzy then, like, that's not cool. There's just lots of stuff in here that it's like, you're trying your hardest to be inclusive and you're trying your hardest to be, like, politically correct, but none of the things that your characters are saying are actually making out that they're doing that. And I just feel like in this day and age, especially because 12 Days of Dash and Lily is not that old. This is like a few years older, but it reads like it was written in the very early 2000s. Like, it feels really dated, even though it was published in 2011. It reads like it was from like 2003. And then, because they're meant to be set a year apart, but because they were written like 7 years apart, you get pop culture references in this one that are really, really dated, and pop culture references in this one that are really current. So you can feel the discrepancy between them. Like, it's not like just a year has passed. And I feel like they should have either set it a few years apart, or they should have made a lot more effort to make references that were relevant to like 2012, 2013 time, because then you wouldn't have like that much of a discrepancy. Honestly, I'm thinking of unhauling these, but like the cover of this one's so beautiful, and this one's signed and personalised, and I just don't want to do it. But I just don't, like, every time I see them on the shelf, I just get so irrationally grumpy because they really didn't do it for me. And everybody said they were going to, and I can't see why it's being adapted to a Netflix show movie, because there's just not really enough content. Like, you can see how skinny they are, and it's just not really all that much happens. But yeah, if you loved these, then I'm not quite sure why. But please, like, let me know down below, like, what I'm missing. If there's just something about these that I just completely missed, and that's why they're so popular. The next book that I read in December was What She Found in the Woods by Josephine Angelini. Now, I actually had an advanced copy of this through NetGalley, and I ended up giving it 4 stars because I did really enjoy it. It's about a girl who goes into the woods and she finds a boy called Rainbow, and he lives in the forest with his family because they've decided to go off the grid. They're like anti-government, anti-this and that. But honestly, like, it's really forgettable. I'm finding it really hard to remember why I gave it a 4-star. There's quite a big twist at the end, and I know that really kept me gripped, and it was quite like heart racing, but it wasn't what I was expecting. Like, it was a lot more of like a romance rather than like thrillery. And yeah, I'm just really struggling to remember why I liked it. So maybe I shouldn't have given it a 4-star, but there you go. This is what happens when you've just had a baby and you're reading in like the middle of the night while you're feeding. Your brain takes it in and gets really excited, but you don't actually take in any of it. The next book that we read in December was Northern Lights by Philip Pullman. Now, I tried to read Northern Lights last April when my daughter was a month old, and I was just laying in bed and I was absolutely loving it, and I read like 100 pages in one go, and then I just switched off. I just couldn't take any more of it in. I decided to read it with my partner this time around because I thought it would keep me a bit more switched on. But even though I was reading it out loud, I still found myself like not paying attention. I had to keep stopping at the end of a page and like skimming to see what was going on. Like, Philip Pullman's writing is very clever. It's an alternate version of Our England. So it's set in Britain, but it's spelt with a Y at the beginning, so it's Brytain. And Lyra's Oxford is similar to our Oxford, so you'll still see like the Bodleian Library is like Bodlei's Library, and you've got all of the colleges, but because there's a lot of setup, like making the world, explaining what dust is, explaining what the alethiometer is, meeting Lyra and the demons, because every character in this world has a demon that accompanies them. So there's a lot of setup. We did continue on with the series. I'll share our thoughts properly in the January wrap-up, but it does get a lot better. So if you're somebody who struggled with book 1, just give book 2 a go, because The Subtle Knife is my favourite out of the 3 by far. As you can see, like, this is quite chunky. They are quite large, but if you think of it as like one cohesive story rather than 3 individual ones, then I find it's a lot easier to digest it, because then you get like the really big kind of climax in the middle, and then you get towards the conclusion at the end, rather than having like neat plot arcs in each book. Yeah, if you haven't read these, I'll be quite surprised, because they are very, very classic, and there's a new BBC show called His Dark Materials that has just been released that I think it's just the events of book 1, but I might be wrong on that. But yeah, these are definitely coming back into the public awareness, and I'm glad that I finally gave them a go. I'm also glad that I didn't read them when I was younger, because I think so much of it would have gone over my head, and I know they're like a children's classic, but I would definitely recommend waiting till you're a bit older. So if you've got a child who is interested in these, maybe try and point them in a different direction, or make sure that you're reading it with them so that you can explain some of the more complex bits that are going on, because even I had to stop and like really digest everything, because it's a lot all at once. The next 2 books that I read in December were on the Riveted Lit Free Reads, because they do an advent calendar for the month of December. So each day they put a different free book up, and you've got 24 hours to read it, unless you load it up on your phone and then it stays until you can finish it, because there's no way I could read a book in a day. I just don't have the time for it. So the 2 books I read in a row were Love from A to Z by S.K. Alley, which was a 5-star read. It's about a boy who has some kind of disease that his mother died from it. I can't remember what it was. Oh no. So Adam has just been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which his mum died from a couple of years ago, and him and Zainab, who is the lead female character, meet in an airport when they're both flying back to their homes. She is flying because she's been excluded because she called out a teacher's racism, and he is flying home because he's dropped out of college because of his MS. It's just such a beautiful story because it's all about love and like finding love in the most unexpected places. And this is another book that I read the epilogue and I just cried for like 20 minutes because it's just absolutely perfect. I haven't read S.K. Alley's other works, but it's definitely an author that I'm going to be keeping an eye out for because honestly, absolutely blown away by it. The second riveted book that I read in December was Start Again by Trish Dollar, and this is about 2 girls who go on a boat ride. So their friend has just died from cancer, and she had it in her head that as soon as they graduated, the 3 of them would get a boat and they would go on this trip and they would just explore around America. Now she's died, and the 2 friends who are left, she was both of their best friends, but they never really got on. But they decided to go on the trip anyway to honour her memory. It ended up being a 3-star read for me. The beginning was very good. It really gets you emotionally because you get to see their friend filming this video knowing that she's not going to be there, and it's like it definitely focuses on the importance of friendship and just sticking together through any kind of adversity, but I think because it's written in 3rd person present tense, I believe, there's a lot of distance between you and the characters, so it's hard to empathise exactly how I think Trish Dollar intends you to. So you're following these characters around, but I just felt a bit alienated from them. That's my own personal problem because it's not a writing style that I enjoy, and if I'd realised that it was going to be written in that style before I'd started reading it, I probably would have given up because it's just really not my favourite. It might be the kind of book that you enjoy, so if you're interested in trying a different writing style, one that's not really commonly used, it's probably exactly the right thing for you, but it just didn't quite get there for me. I will be trying some of Trish Dollar's other works though, because like her writing's really good. I'm just hoping that she doesn't use the same writing style on all of them. We then read Let It Snow, which is a collection of 3 short stories by Lauren Miracle, John Green and Maureen Johnson. This is really not worth reading either. I bought this so long ago. I got the nice shiny hardcover fancy edition. I've been putting it off because John Green's writing always is either hit or miss for me. Looking for Alaska, one of my favourite books of all time. Fault in Our Stars, the worst thing I've ever read. I literally threw it across the room in anger. I wasn't sure which side of the pile Let It Snow was going to end up falling on, and it was a 3-star average. So you've got Maureen Johnson's story, easily the best of them all. Didn't annoy me that much, but I wasn't really a huge fan of the other 2. So John Green's book is one of those ones where you've got the really pretentious character. They're really wordy for literally no reason. It doesn't read like an actual real life teenager. And then Lauren Miracle's story is the worst one because it's about a girl who cheats on her boyfriend, and then you're meant to sympathise with her because she's like, oh my god, why doesn't he love me anymore? I'm alone at Christmas. And it's like, because you slept with someone else. That's why he doesn't love you anymore. Like, he still loves her, and I think they end up getting back together. I can't really remember, but it just annoyed me so much because she's like, oh, friends, I'm so sad and alone. It's like, well, don't kiss other people at parties then. Like, I can't even remember if they slept together, if it was just a kiss. But, like, just be faithful if somebody means that much to you. Don't bitch about the fact that they don't give you enough attention and then kiss their friend at a Christmas party. That's not how it works. And it really annoys me that this has been made into a Netflix show and everybody's like, oh my god, I love that, it's so much. And it's like, but that's really problematic. Like, don't teach teenagers that it's fine to kiss other people and then you'll still end up getting back together because Christmas is so romantic and it would be so wonderful to have someone for Christmas. No, if you've kissed somebody else, there's obviously problems with your relationship that you need to address, and just pretending it didn't happen and trying to get back together is not the way to do that. Oh, John Green, you annoy me so much, and it wasn't even your story. It was Lauren Miracle's story. Oh! Annoyed. is not even the word when it comes to that one. The next book that we read in December was The Geography of You and Me. So this was a book that I had previously read and rated 4 stars, and I read it with my partner and he was like, why didn't you give it 5 stars? And I was like, why didn't I? I have no idea. So this is about Lucy and Owen, and when there is a power cut, they get stuck in a lift together. So Owen's dad has gone to visit his mum's grave. Lucy's parents are on holiday and they've abandoned her in New York by herself because why would they take their child with them? And they meet in this lift and they have this wonderful night together when all of the power is out and there's like this massive power cut across the entirety of New York State. And then the power comes back on and Lucy's parents are like, yeah, we're moving to London. Okay, that's fine. So she moves and then London doesn't end up working out, so they end up moving to Scotland. And then Owen's dad loses his job, so he is the maintenance man in the building and he loses his job, so they're not allowed to stay there anymore, so they end up going on a road trip. So it's about these two people who meet in like the most intimate space that they could possibly meet in, and then all of a sudden they're torn apart and they're thousands and thousands of miles away, and it's like whether their relationship will work out, whether they'll even be able to maintain a friendship because of the distance between them. I don't know why I didn't give this 5 stars first time around, because I absolutely love it. Like, it's so clever and it's really fluffy, really light, but it's the perfect thing to read at Christmas. And I keep thinking that the reason the power cuts out is because it's like a snowstorm or something, but it isn't. It's like the height of summer. So when I was reading it, I was like, why are they so hot? It's winter, but it's not. So I don't know why. I'm always going to associate with this one with Christmas because I keep reading it at Christmas. But like in the future, when I recommend Christmas books, just don't trust me on this one because it's not Christmassy. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I still absolutely love it. It's so wonderful. Jennifer E. Smith is great. The next book that I read in December was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is another book that's been on my TBR for God knows how long, and I finally decided to read it. I started it with my partner. We get like 3 chapters in. He's like, I don't like it. Read it without me. I'm like, what? I absolutely loved it. Like, you've got 4 boys, who are the Raven Boys, and you've got Blue, who is the daughter of a psychic, who she's meant to have psychic powers, but she doesn't because shit happens in families, and sometimes powers don't pass on. But she can make her family's gift stronger just by being in the room. So she goes to a church with her aunt, I believe, on Midsummer's Night. I'm not quite sure when it is. I don't quite remember. But they're in the churchyard. Oh, St. Mark's Eve. So they're in the churchyard. It's St. Mark's Eve. And Blue sees this ghost. And he says his name is Gansey. And then, lo and behold, you jump to the other perspective. And there's Gansey. And you're like, oh shit, this is going to end terribly. Because she has prophecy that she kills the first boy she kisses. And if you've seen someone's spirit, it means that you're responsible for their death or that you killed them. So, yeah, it's not looking good for Gansey. And we're only 1 book in out of the 4 of them. But, like, honestly, I don't know why it took me so long to read it. I've tried to read it either 3 or 4 times. I picked it up, I put it down, I picked it up, I put it down, and I've never been able to get into it. And this time around, like, I was absorbed. Like, I think I read it in, like, 2 days. The ending annoyed me a little bit because it definitely just sets it straight up for book 2, because book 2 is called The Dream Thieves, and like the last line is like, I stole something from my dream, and it's like, wow, okay, you could have just put that in book 2. Like, we were going to buy book 2 anyway, Maggie Stiefvater. You didn't need to shoehorn that in to make us like, oh no, there's been a big climax now, oh no, a cliffhanger. People are going to buy your books anyway. Don't do cheap tactics to like keep people absorbed, because that just made me be a bit like, oh, I don't know if I want to pick up book 2 now. But I do, and I'm going to, either in February or in March. We'll see how the rest of the series goes for me. But I think this is going to end up probably being my favourite Maggie Stiefvater series, which is pretty cool. The next book that I read in December was All the Bad Apples by Moira Fowley Doyle. This is about a girl who is a lesbian. She's from a family where all of the women are seen as bad apples because there's a curse from way, way back where one of their ancestors she gets pregnant from the like lord of the manor, and he doesn't want her, so she steals his apple tree and throws it over a cliff. And then it curses them, so then all of the women have these terrible things happen to them. But this girl, her aunt dies, But she's convinced that she's not dead, so she follows these letters that she's been leaving across the country, and everywhere she goes, she finds out a bit more of their family history. So you're jumping back and forward through time. You're following the girl and her friends in the, like, present day, but you're also following all of her family tree, like, this woman, this woman, this woman. So you get the woman who threw the apple tree, and then you get her daughter, and then their son, I believe. But you're following the family all the way down this family tree, and I'm really interested in family trees and genealogy and family history, so it's exactly the kind of book I wanted to read. But I also think it's very timely because it's set in Ireland. You get a lot about there's a rape, there's the homes where they took babies to be with nuns, and then a lot of the babies died. So it's very current and relevant, especially for Ireland at the moment, because where they've only just kind of passed the abortion rulings. You can see exactly why Moira Fowley Doyle wrote it, and at times it does come across as like a little bit preachy, which is why I only gave it 4 stars, because I just feel like there's some bits that are quite heavy-handed and they could have been done more smoothly. But I really appreciate what she's tried to do, and I'm definitely going to try her other books. So that's another author that I think is going to end up being an auto-buy for me. The next books that we read in December was actually another complete series. So we read The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. I'd read The Cruel Prince before and I gave it 5 stars. But I think I was just a bit swept away by the hype, because when I read it with my partner, I was like, I can't really understand why I loved it as much as I thought I did. We ended up taking the rating on this one down to 4 stars, but it's still my favourite book in the series, because I don't know what it is about the other two, but they just really disappointed me. I did it because I read The Cruel Prince just before it came out, and I was so excited about the other two that I got myself too excited. So The Cruel Prince is a story about a girl and her twin sister who get taken to fairyland when their sister's father kills their parents. So their half-sister, Vivi, is half fae, and their mother escaped from fairyland and managed to get into the mortal realm with where she had Jude and Taryn. So now Madoc takes Jude and Taryn and Vivi back to fairyland, so it's these 2 mortal girls who grow up in the land of fae. It's a really interesting concept, and I think that the first book is the most superior one because there's a bit in the middle that will just blow your mind. When I read it this time, I found myself like almost squealing even though I was reading it out loud. And the first time I read it, my jaw just dropped. I was so impressed. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And you can tell I thought it was brilliant because I bought all 3 of the special edition Owl Crate covers, and I've dropped so much money on this series. So for me to now be really disappointed by the other 2, it just breaks my heart. So The Wicked King focuses primarily on the Queen of the Undersea, and then the Queen of Nothing. I can't really tell you much because obviously I don't want to give spoilers. But, it's just a very disappointing conclusion. It's very, very thin, and I always think that when the 3rd book in a series is the skinniest one, that is going to be a problem, because that should be when they're really wrapping everything up and bringing everything together and making the most of the last time that they're going to be writing these characters, rather than just rushing everything. I think the fact that both of these books are published in 2019 makes me wonder whether the publishers might have been rushing Holly to finish it, because The Cruel Prince is so beautifully fleshed out, and these 2 are just nowhere near to the standard that I'd expected. A lot of people seem to be having the same problem, so I'm glad it's not just me. But yeah, I'm really disappointed because I thought this was going to be one of my favourite series of all time. We ended up giving The Wicked King 3 stars and The Queen of Nothing 4 stars. But whereas The Cruel Prince is like 4.3, Queen of Nothing is like 3.6. So there's quite a big difference between how much I enjoyed them. I just kind of rounded them both to 4 for now. I've got a feeling Queen of Nothing is going to end up getting dropped down. I'm probably going to write a proper series review with like spoilers and stuff on the blog for these ones, because I do have a lot of thoughts about how that last book played out. But yeah, a bit of a shame, but I'm glad that I actually finished them, because I thought I was just going to read The Cruel Prince and then never touch the others, so I'm glad I forced myself to do it. The penultimate book that I read in December was The Complete Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. This was again one that had been on my currently reading, for longer than I can remember. I started it in sixth form. I said I got 100 pages in. I lied, I got like 30 pages in, and I was reading it for like a year. I used to be a really slow reader. I just didn't like doing it that much. But this is all of the short stories, the one novel, and all the poems that Edgar Allan Poe ever wrote. I split it up. I read like, I think it was 2 or 3 short stories every day to get through it. It's 1,000 pages, so the fact that I managed to read it in a month while also having a newborn, I'm pretty impressed with. Gotta admit, most of them aren't worth reading. There are some really, really good ones. Like in the middle, there's this whole bit where there's like a lot of mysteries. Like you've got the mystery of Mary Roget, you've got the fall of the House of Usher. Obviously, the Telltale Heart is really popular, and that's a really good one. But the majority of these, you can see why they're not talked about, because they're really forgettable and they're quite hard to read because his writing style is very dense. And the amount of times that there's just like a whole list of descriptions, and you're like, what are you even describing? I can't remember what you're describing because you're just listing. I think, yeah, maybe read like a best of rather than the complete works. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I averaged out my ratings for every single one of the stories, which was more math than I wanted to do with a 3-week-old, but 3 stars it was. And the very last book that I read in December was Slay by Brittany Morris. This was another one that was put on the free reads on Riveted Lit, and it's about a girl who creates a video game that is primarily aimed at black people because she's fed up with being racially abused by players when she plays on MMORPGs. Now, when this game hits the spotlight, it's for a really bad reason, because a kid gets killed because he took his friend's like virtual money, and then he was trying to like get him to give real money for it, and so he ends up getting shot and killed. And our main character has to deal with the fact that she feels completely responsible for this kid's death, and she also starts getting attacked by a user on the game. She doesn't know who it is. She thinks it might be her friend's brother because he's very passionate. He's a reporter and he's looking into the story. But she has to fight his character in-game, and she wagers the entire game on it. So it's like either she wins and she gets to keep the game and he will leave forever, or she loses and she loses everything. It's very short. I read it in 1 day. I wish it had been longer because I absolutely loved it. Like I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Brittany Morris's writing is just superb. Like, she hits the nail on the head. And if you're a fan of The Hate U Give, with the fact that it's like, it talks a lot about the racial experiences and the way that racism is so intrinsic in our society that we're often completely blind to it and we just don't actually see that it's a problem. And I think if you like that kind of really hard-hitting, kind of like magnifying glass on society writing style, then Slay is exactly the book for you. It's got a lot of comparisons to Ready Player One, and I can see those as well. So you've got like the video game is really well fleshed out. I found myself wanting to play it. Like, it sounded so good. You've got like all of these different cards with like different characters on them. Good time we're coming home, so I'm in the middle of book, the last one. So you have, like, in this game you can get different cards that have lots of information about Black history, and it's really educational as well as fun. So yeah, it's a brilliant concept, and I think Brittany Morris writes it so well. I just wish it had been longer because I would have loved to have really enveloped myself in the world a bit more. And that's it for this month. So I can't even count how many books that was altogether. I'll probably put it down in the description when I've managed to get it all sorted out. But yeah, considering we have like a 3-week-old, we've managed to read a lot of books this month. Lots of complete series, lots of series that we've started and we're going to try and hopefully finish as soon as we can. If you've read any of these books and you'd like to share your thoughts, just pop your comments down below. It's always great to talk to you guys. And I'll see you in a few days, hopefully, with a new video. Bye!